I'm Sanaa Ali. I'm doing also research in the field of ethnology and cultural sciences in Bremen University. It is also a PhD research. I'm not specialized with politics. I'm specialized with something else. It's called ethnography and cultural sciences. In Arabic language, we say علم الأعراق البشرية والثقافات. Today, I will talk about the illegal immigration and its impact on security, exactly here in Germany. We want to talk about something important, that not everyone who is asylum seeker is a refugee, because we have many refugees, but they are not refugees. So the aim of this presentation, all of us we know recently, or at present, Europe faces an unprecedented inflow of refugees, which confronts it with great challenges. Germany is particularly affected by the high number of refugees and its accompanying consequences. So, the aim of this presentation today is to show how the refugee crisis led to a modification of internal and external security measures in Germany. The thing is, what is refugee? Or what is the meaning of refugee? Actually, this is what the main question of my research in PhD. I want to show the meaning of refugee. If everyone is a refugee, or if everyone who asks asylum is a refugee. So, according to the United Nations conventions relating to the status of refugee in 1951, as a result of events occurring before 1 January 1951, and owing to well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality, and is unable or owing to such fear is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of that country, or who, not having a nationality and being outside the country of his former habitual residence, as a result of such events, is unable or owing to such fear is unwilling to return to it. This is the scientific definition to refugees that is declared by the United Nations. But the thing that we witness now, especially in Germany and in Europe, not all of those people who are really characterized with these characteristics, that is why I said we need to know or scheduleize again the meaning of refugees. So, immigration to Germany. The German government forecasts that the total number of asylum applications filled by people for the first time in 2018 reacted 166,000, according to the Federal Ministry of the Interior, according to DW on 6 January 2019. In 2018, it was less than the maximum number set by the German government for the number of refugees, which ranged between 180 to 220,000 people annually. This is the number that the German government declares in this time. The majority of those refugees who arrived in Germany in 2018 came from Syria, 27%, and Iraq 10%, and Iran 7%. The majority of those refugees are young people, with 74% of refugees arriving in Germany under the age of 30. The German government, sorry, this is another one. Sometimes, or some things we do not need to talk about more. Maybe we see, as we said in sociology, this kind of semiotics. The situation that we witness in this country, the attitude of German, when they accepted, first of all, those huge groups or waves who are ask asylum in this country. So, as according to my study, that I'm a person who studied semiotics analysis for these phenomena, the analysis concludes that the security measures were modified to react to a changing perception of the refugees by the German population, whose opinion changed from a welcomed culture to a demand for a restricted refugee intake due to the events described in the findings part. I think those pictures shows us exactly how is the situation it was in the beginning and how it was. We call it as a shift attitude. At the beginning, they were welcomed with the refugees, or they said Bewegungsfreiheit für alle, movement freedom for all. So those pictures exactly shows us how is the attitude of German population changed according to this phenomena. The events that demonstrate the attitude shift of German population. First, protest against asylum seekers occurred in Freital, Germany, and a refugee camp was set on fire in Meissen. These events should mark the beginning of a growing anti-refugee sentiment among parts of the German population. On 25 August 2015, the German Ministry of Migration and Refugees announced that the suspension of the Dublin Agreement for Syrians without consulting other European states. According to this agreement, asylum seekers are sent back to the European country where they entered the EU. In 17 October 2015, the candidate for the mayor post of Cologne, who was a former social security responsible for the accommodation and integration of refugees, was stopped by a man who declared that the refugee policy of Chancellor Merkel and her supporters was wrong. That is why he had to free society from those people who were responsible for Germany's self-destruction and endangered the country's security. This attack marked the most violent reaction to the refugees policy far. And in August, again, 2015, from that time to the end of 2015, the mood of the population had changed from welcomed culture, as we said, to skepticism. In Arabic, we said shak. The 2015 balance of crimes against refugees shows that the crime rate increased drastically. In 2014, 199 attacks on asylum shelters were registered. In 2015, it was 1.005, 5 times higher. In general, extreme right-wing crimes increased by 30% compared to 2014 to 13,846 cases, reaching their peak in September and October. In September and October 2015, after the suspension of the Dublin Agreement. So, this is one of the books that I mentioned also. It is about this topic, or this kind of resource to my presentation also today. It is called German Security Measures and the Refugees Crisis, 2012, published in October 2016. I will thank you all to listening to my short presentation, but as I said, just I want to show and shed light on the distinguish or the difference between the meaning of refugee and also to concentrate on illegal immigration and what it happens in the last time in Germany from crimes that it happens to both sides as well. Thank you so much for listening. For questions, I'm here. Or remarks. If not, we can start to read our recommendations at the end of this conference. Yes, please.
What do you think that produced the shift from the initial attitude of welcoming towards refugees and the attitude that some German people have today?
I understand exactly. Because in 2000, in 2014, 2015, Germany faced really a huge waves of illegal immigrants or asylum seekers. At the beginning, they had also German and refugees themselves, they had kind of expectations. They had, of course, they are both from different cultures, and everyone he had an expectation about the other cultures. But it happens now, after that, these kinds of attacks, or some, let us say, mistakes or attacks, or not only violence or something like this, it makes German people change their attitude. Not only also German people, also the other side, who are also asylum seekers. That's what I mean, change in culture, attitude, or shift in attitude. Yes?
Yeah, do you think the change in attitude towards these migrants have a kind of effect on the human development and capabilities?
I understand. I don't want to deny that also are responsible. I mean, refugees or asylum seekers, because they are new in this country. Also, they should present themselves in a way that we need. Or most of us are here Arabs, from Arab cultures, and everyone he should learn how to present himself in the new culture. They do not learn it because it takes time, and the government also focus on a lot of programs for those people. Of course, they had done mistakes. Then they let the other side, let us say, go back a little bit, or shift the attitude, or change his paradigm, because everyone he had paradigm or expectations about the other sides. This is what we say, it is the dialogue between those sides. I think it doesn't work in a correct or in a healthy way. Yes, please.
I don't really understand, like, do you really consider these incidents, like these attacks on politicians? We have had two assassinations in the last couple of years. Do you consider that really an indicator for an atmosphere, or a general, or maybe I misunderstood this, a general change of attitude? I mean, these are cases of extremely violent, criminal, or maybe even mentally disturbed individuals that do not reflect the public opinion.
Two things. Let us say two things. Those who are really radicalist, it is kind of behavior. It doesn't just relate with culture or with the country, or who they are. Or for example, or in our countries, in our Middle East countries, we have a lot of racist people and radical people. So I think, according to my opinion, radical, it is kind of behavior. It is not only something related with culture. But in this kind of change, what you said, it depends also on such reasons. Also, some of them really, they change their mind or they change attitude according to what happened. But others, they had this kind of attitude already.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, I think one needs to be extremely careful. I'm sure that you're laying this out in your PhD, but you should be extremely careful not to confuse a particular isolated event with a general change in the society. Like I hear people say, oh, the Germans have become discontent with the situation to the extent that some are now even killing politicians. And this makes no sense, It's just like one guy, one mentally sick person stabbed the mayor of Köln, and a member of a right-wing terrorist organization assassinated a politician in Hessen. But are these really indicators, or are they somehow related to a change of public opinion? That's what I think.
But I myself, not only as a researcher, as a person who worked in social field and cultural field as well, I touch this kind of change in German behavior with refugees. I touch it.
But it's not related to these events.
No, of course. But the change, it happens. This is fact. We are not able to deny this fact. In 2014 or 2015, Germans are different, not like now. The kind of support to understand to the other, it's totally. This is what I touch it in my work.
Could the year 2016 be real? Because 2016 started with the portrayal of the mass rape
Yes.
in
yeah.
in Cologne.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
So that's one perception.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then
yeah.
you have the attacks in Ansbach, Würzburg,
Yes, this is another.
and this Amri
Yeah,
at
yes,
the end of
yes.
the year. And I think maybe the reflection of the change is probably more in the AfD numbers,
Mhm,
for example,
mhm,
when you notice from 2013 to 2017, the local effects, even it's more of a symptom. We're talking more about a temporary demonstration.
Mhm.
But I think from the German perspective, the way the whole narrative, to come back to your was framed, I think probably had this influence.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yeah, yes, yes. According to this event that happened in Cologne, I personally experienced this event. I worked also with German also in this field. So when they also they had seen this situation, really they astonished, and then they became really go back a little bit. In the beginning, they were really positive, helping refugees, but then really they became back after this event. It was horrible, because it was kind of astonishing, not only to German, to all, of course. This is one maybe of the reasons. There's many reasons it happens, yeah. Because of course, not all those people who are here, as I said, they're asylum seekers or they are angels. Many are criminals.
I think there is a good reason to mention the psychological aspect here,
Yes,
because
yeah.
after all, the rather radical change in situation in 2015, 2016 led among many people to a sort of fear. And if you add to a general atmosphere of fear,
Yes.
uncertainty towards the unknown, and you add to that some diagnosis, like was the case in some of these murders, then you have the problem. And you cannot conclude from this fear plus this diagnosis that there is a radical change in the German attitude towards
Of course.
Islam or
Yeah,
foreigners.
of course, for a series of events, let us say, and media also. They send a lot of fake propaganda.
Yeah.
This also for both sides. For the media send for asylum seekers or for refugees kind of media, and they send also to the other side, the German publication. So this is spielt große Rolle. This plays really a very big role in this point. I think fake media also it makes this kind of horror situation
Yeah, yeah.
more. Another question? Yes, please.
Yeah, as a, to say, Bio-Deutsche, actually I was very suspicious in 2015 about the Germans, because I already had the feeling that this would definitely change from refugees welcome to the other extreme, because I thought that it's also a little bit part of the German mentality, because it was like refugees, but what does refugee mean? These are people, different people, and you have good people, bad people.
Of course,
like in
of
every
course.
German small village. So actually, of course, I am shocked. Yeah. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if you watch
Hi.
documentaries about
I understand your
in the
question, Heike.
80s
Yeah,
or
yeah.
in the early 90s, when I was a teenage girl, and sometimes I'm still scared to go to the former GDR part of Germany, because I still remember what was going on there. So maybe it was just this media image that everybody was so enthusiastic, but if you know something about Germany, you could
Heike,
guess that
yeah, I
it
understand
changed.
totally. I understand totally your question. Many German also they do not recognize how is the situation outside, because maybe they worked in some isolated places. They are maybe in banks or something else. But those who really works in those active fields, really they can recognize how is the society, how it doesn't change. You know, because for someone who works in social field, not for someone who is working in the bank all the time or sitting in the office, this would be possible. Yes, please.
Because I think also Mr. Gerlach mentioned one important point, is that a lot of people are very simple, they have very simple life. We have the problem of education.
Yes,
If you
yes.
take an example of a German young man, hard working in a restaurant or in a service, or I don't know. At the end of the month, he has 1,200 euros. He has to pay for a flat 700, 800 euros from this small salary he's gaining. And he compares himself with a young Syrian refugee.
Exactly. This is one of the most important points as well.
He will pay for his flat,
Yes.
he will pay for his education, he will pay for everything. There is an injustice.
Finance
Finance
point.
back to what is the propaganda of parties like
Yes,
the
yes.
other one. They are playing with that. I think that the German, we are one of the most rich countries in Europe.
Yes.
We have a very important road into Europe, and we can welcome all these people. Compared to
course.
Lebanon, and you are experts in the region, you know Lebanon. If we see how many people, Syrian peoples, are in Lebanon, Germany.
In Jordan as well. In
80
Jordan.
million
Yeah.
people, we have 1 million.
But they are not
We can do-
welcome.
Yeah, this is the problem. They are not
allowed
welcome,
to
but
go to school.
yeah, but you remember that the Syrian, they welcome the Lebanese. You know, this is also a political play in the region that we will not talk about that. I think the problem was that it was not very well prepared for. We have very hard bureaucracy in Germany. We come back to what Saint-Pierre mentioned, Mrs. Saint-Pierre. It's really difficult, and they are not feeling that they are welcome, the refugees. The Germans, maybe some of them are faced to a reality, brutal reality also, that we have good people, we have bad people, and after Berlin Christmas market, I think the minds also changed. It was very important.
Yes, yes.
Do we
those
still have a few
event-
minutes?
those-
Because this is a very interesting.
attack events.
Depends
point.
on how loud their stomachs are, because I think we're already
Yes.
30 minutes past lunchtime.
But you bring up an interesting point that is more like policy, but also public opinion. You said it was very ill prepared. Very interesting point, because let's try to have a scenario what it would have meant to prepare for this situation. In 2013-14, the funding for many of the refugee camps, United Nations run refugee camps, were cut down, were reduced. Jordan, Lebanon. Back then, talk to experts. I'm not an expert on migration, but I was part of the people that were following this situation. It was clear that the whole caravan is going to be set in motion soon. Experts in Europe knew that sooner or later we will have a mass influx of migrants from Syria. Where, it's logical, where should they go? It's not that Merkel said, hey, come over guys. No, that's absolute nonsense. But it was clear from a very early moment of the crisis that we will have a mass influx of migrants. Now put yourself into the skin of a government. This is a situation where you're like, I don't want to hear anything, I don't want to see anything, don't tell me, please don't tell me your expert opinion, because it would have meant, imagine the government calls on a federal, on a local, on a municipal, on a state level, all the institutions says like, guys, I think we're going to soon have 800,000, or not 800, I don't want to exaggerate, 500,000 people over here. Get ready. Create Planstellen, jobs in the administration, place in the schools, make sure that you have the bureaucratic procedures in place. You know what would have happened? Political opposition, public opinion, they were like, are you guys crazy? So their situation, this is the paradox of this situation. Not being prepared for the situation was the government's choice to prepare for the situation.
Yeah, because there is a fundamental difference here. We very often speak about Uganda, for instance, as a fantastic receiver of refugees from the neighboring countries. But let's compare the level of ambition of the government of Uganda towards normal citizens of Uganda with the level of ambition of the government of Germany, or for that sake Sweden, who took proportionally even more refugees than Germany. The level of ambition is full social welfare service to each citizen. And this means automatically that new potential citizens, refugees, in a humanitarian spirit shall be received welcomed with the full support. So this means an enormous pressure, and today, 4 or 5 years later, in Sweden, for instance, we see municipalities threatened by bankruptcy because they simply couldn't mobilize enough teachers or nurses for the hospitals or accommodation for the people and so on. So it is becoming an enormous administrative and economic burden because of this very high level of ambition towards each citizen.
Higher expectations. Kind of.
High expectations.
Yes, higher
exactly.
expectations.
Right.
That's exactly what it happens to Iraqi asylum seekers in 2015. They had kind of a very higher expectations about the life or the new life in Germany. But after 1 month or 2 weeks, many, they decided to go back. So according to the statistic that I get it from our embassy in here in Berlin, I get 10,000 who decided to go back. Those who get Reise Pass to go back Iraq, and many, they decided to use their passports. You know, many asylum seekers, they are here without any passports or any official documents. Just those who are, we had in our statistic 10,000 who decided to go back. The problem is the higher expectations that asylum seekers or refugees have about Europe or any other country as well who ask asylum.
You have dozens, if not hundreds, of people. If the statistics are not out yet, who are going back to Syria.
Yes,
by the way.
Yeah.
They're going back. I'm not. Of course, I'm not talking about Idlib, but I'm talking about going back to Damascus, to Aleppo. It's good that the government says we cannot send people back because Syria is not safe for them, but people on an individual decision deem that it's worth.
Exactly. Many documentary films also about this topic. Many, they decide also to go back to Syria, to Iraq also. They publish many articles also in German media, and many also, if you have done any research, you can find many articles about this topic on YouTubes or short films as well. If no other more questions, I would highly appreciate your attendance here today and looking to meet you in next event or conference. And now I let Heike please to read our recommendation for this conference in the last time. Thank you.